SeaWorld, a whale has eaten one of the trainers. I hate even saying those words because they're shocking, but that was exactly why I was drawn to watch this film. Hi, I'm Molly Lutton. The film that I reviewed and watched was titled Blackfish. It was released in 2013 and the director was Gabriella Cowperthwaite. Well, the reason why I chose that quote is because of the shock value, and the reason why it's so important is that I remember when that event happened. I remember hearing it on the news and I thought it was horribly sad and tragic, and so I was really interested to see the backstory and to hear from trainers that worked at SeaWorld and the impact that that event had and the deep backstories that no one has heard and that don't get covered in the news. And to this day, there is no record of an orca doing any harm to any human in the wild. And that was said by Howard Garrett, who is an orca researcher. And the reason that's important is because this whole film is about whales kept in captivity and the effects of living in those conditions for years, entire lifetimes. Whales they're born in captivity, they continue to be in captivity. And not just captivity, but performances. They're performing day in and day out, all day long. It's quite a life, and it has a very negative impact on these magnificent animals. So I'll show you a map quickly this is the only color map I have in our house. It's all the national parks of the United States. This film is generally about the SeaWorld in Orlando, which is right here on the map. I'll try to zoom in if I can. Right here in Orlando, Florida. It does also mention the SeaWorld in San Diego, California. And then the original Shamu, I suppose, and the one that caused all of these ensuing issues actually came from Victoria, Canada. And the real name of the whale is Tilikum, not Shamu. So why does this film relate to geography? It's a really interesting thing to think about, but to me, and we've discussed so many different cultural, social, economic, political events throughout this course in our discussions, and geography is a science that deals with the description, distribution, and interaction of the diverse physical, biological, and cultural features on the Earth's surface. So to me, this made me think of our biological resources, the whales. They're certainly a biological resource of the planet. And so when we think about consumption of resources, consumption of natural resources, and sustainability, this film ties in perfectly. And so to me, the fact that any entity, whether it's an individual or a business, for this film, in this case, that it's a business, it's a money-making venture, SeaWorld, feels that they have the right to poach orcas from their natural habitat to be put into small enclosures. It's a really hard thing to comprehend that. And I think when we're talking about consumption of resources, where does that right come? Who grants SeaWorld the right to steal, basically, to steal orcas from the ocean? How are they given the right to consume these biological resources that are shared by the entire planet? They come in and they poach and they kidnap they divert the mothers away from their babies, and then they capture the baby orcas, and it's breaking the law, it's committing kidnapping. And I don't know, who owns that? Who owns that? Where does SeaWorld feel that it's okay to do that? To just consume these animals and these resources that belong to the entire planet, that belong to everybody. That's an interesting thing to think about. And these beautiful creatures, these orcas, are kidnapped and stolen and then sold for exorbitant sums of money to then be put on display in places like SeaWorld. And people pay money to come see them, and their commercials are magical. They look so amazing. What a gift to be given the opportunity to go see one of these creatures in real life, right up close, to watch the trainers swim with them, and even to be able to maybe pet one. It is such a lucky opportunity. Or is it? I believe there was Sealand in Victoria, Canada, which is where Tilikum originally came from. And Tilikum was having trouble with the other whales in Sealand in Canada. They were deprived of food because that was how they trained whales to perform, was through food deprivation. So a trained whale would mentor an untrained whale, and if the untrained whale didn't perform, they would both be deprived of food. So the trained whale would then attack the untrained whale to get them to do what they needed to do so they could be fed. So eventually Tilikum was sold to SeaWorld in Orlando for a ridiculous sum of money. I don't quite remember actually what it was in the film, but I want to say that it was in the millions. It's an astronomical amount that they pay for these whales to be shipped across the country to SeaWorld. So this speaks to the social culture of our world, and specifically us in the United States and what we value. We are so enamored with these creatures that we justify this consumerism. And if you go to SeaWorld and you go on a tour and you see the animals and you get to speak to a trainer, you'll be told that it's actually better for the animals to live in captivity, and it's actually much safer for them. But that is completely untrue. So the reality is that orca whales have the same life expectancy as a human being, but in captivity they only live to be about 20 to 30 years old. And they're also told, visitors are told, when they see a male orca with the dorsal fin collapsed like this, that's normal. Every male in captivity, every male orca has a collapsed dorsal fin that looks like that. But in reality, less than 1% of all orcas in the wild actually have that happen. It's a symptom of living in a place that they're not meant to live in. So the relevant factors that affect the lives of the people in this film, I think it's consumerism, it's economic factors at play. The trainers, there wouldn't be a SeaWorld if the truth were exposed. If SeaWorld were to admit fault and to admit the massive amounts of violence, basically they have hidden the truth from the trainers, from the employees of SeaWorld, from the public. And if they were to admit fault and liability and uncover all of the lies that they've kept hidden, such as the violence that the whales, when they purchased Tilikum from Canada, there was a huge page report listing all of the instances where Tilikum had lunged or something with a trainer. He was a violent whale, and no one was told that. They bred him. He had babies that were continued to work with trainers, and so what would happen? It would be detrimental to the tourism business, and I don't think people would support SeaWorld if they knew the unspeakable acts and the violations of OSHA and safe working conditions that they commit. They break the law by committing kidnappings, perjury, so many things to list, and they blame all of these things that have happened, they blame on the trainers, whether they slipped into the water, and even this horrible incident where the trainer, um, she was dragged into the water and killed by the whale. They said that she drowned, and that's their press release, and that's what they've told everybody is that she drowned, which is not true. The whale, she drowned because the whale drug her under the water. Um, and it's a horrible, horrible thing. So if the truth were out, I don't think there would be a SeaWorld. I know that I personally would not visit. I don't ever want to go to SeaWorld now that I know how horrible it is for everyone involved, but most especially the whales. So I have a picture here. I had a hard time coming up with a visual aid, but I have a picture here of my 4 kiddos. And I was just thinking if one of my children, if that was one of my children, the woman that was at SeaWorld, the trainer that was killed, that was one of my children, I would be so angry that SeaWorld won't be truthful and won't be honest and admit that what they're doing is wrong. Treating these whales the way that they do is wrong. And that's why I chose a picture of that, because that's what I thought of when I was seeing that. If that were my child and they went through that, I'd be very angry. But mostly I'd want to prevent anybody else from having that same thing happen. It's dangerous. It's just very sad. So something that I think is relevant today in this film and in many areas, actually the really cool Google Earth presentation that I watched was about this, but it's the negative impacts of tourism. There's evidence everywhere to support this, that consumerism, the economy, it's hard because at times tourism does boost the economy in certain areas, especially in the Caribbean. There are definitely positive benefits to tourism. However, when you look at the resources that are used, and sometimes I believe the negative impacts are taking its toll, especially with the growing population and how many people are trying to visit these places that were just not meant to visit. If you look at Mount Everest, a place that truly is uninhabitable and is not meant for human life, because there's such a tourist industry now to go to Mount Everest, there's a major trash problem. All the oxygen canisters, and at the base camp, there's no easy way to get waste off of the mountain. So the trash situation on Mount Everest is disgusting. And other wonders of the world like Machu Picchu, now you have to have a permit, and they only allow so many permits per day to get into the park. And it once was a beautiful, pristine, amazing place. Now there's lines. It's becoming like a Disney World, where you have to buy your ticket in advance and wait in a long line into this natural, beautiful part of the world that maybe human beings just don't need to have everything and be everywhere. So the most important thing that this movie did for me was to expose the truth. And I think we all want to be more mindful and to think more carefully about what we support when we purchase things, when we travel, with our tourism, with our tourist dollars. Where do we want that money going? Are we hurting our planet, or actually are we helping it? Are these mega cruise ships actually, while the experience might be really cool, is it really worth the negative impact on our resources and on our planet and on our oceans? And I was just really grateful to watch this movie. And that's actually what I did my Google Earth presentation on, was the Amazon rainforest and the destruction of resources. And I think as a society, not just the United States, but globally, we are consumers and we want more, and we just continue to take without really thinking about what that means and what it does and what the impact might be on our planet. I think there's a limited supply of everything, and this film for me was just a really, really eye-opening documentary about someone's idea to capture a whale and keep it in a tank and charge money to see this whale do some tricks, but it's turned into a dangerous and very deadly enterprise. And I hope that in the future, if you do want to see a killer whale, maybe SeaWorld isn't the right choice. Maybe read about them in a book, and if you're lucky enough to see one in the wild, that just might be the next best thing. So I hope you have enjoyed my presentation, and thanks so much for watching.